The Cincinnati Bengals may have won the battle, but they might have lost the war, and Joe Burrow could be out until Christmas. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, The Legacy, Louis DiBiase. On today's episode, we're recapping a crazy Sunday in the NFL. We got some wild finishes with the Indianapolis Colts and Daniel Jones going to 2-0. On Sunday Night Football, the Falcons defense dominated and J.J. McCarthy turned back into a pumpkin. But we got to start with panic time for the Cincinnati Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs. Before we dive in, though, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day, and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Louis, once again, the Cincinnati Bengals win that game against the Jacksonville Jaguars 31-27. But the big news coming out of that, despite the Bengals going 2-0, is the injury to Joe Burrow. And we've gotten some updates on Sunday night. I throw it to my guy Jake Lisco from Locked On Bengals to give us the latest.
Man, Joe Burrow just cannot catch a break. The turf toe injury that he sustained on Sunday against the Jaguars now reportedly is expected to need surgery. Could need surgery. They're still weighing their options, but according to Ian Rappaport, for example, the options to keep Joe Burrow on the field are dwindling. We'll have more for you on this topic on Locked On Bengals, of course, but reminiscent now of the hit he took against Baltimore a couple of years ago that led to the unprecedented wrist ligament issue. This turf toe issue for Joe Burrow could be severe and keep him out for at least 3 months, longer than 3 months, if that surgery is in fact required, and that seems to be the trajectory of the reporting. We'll keep you up to date as we get more information about this injury on Locked On Bengals.
Now, as Jake said, there is the chance he's going to see a specialist in this area. There is a chance that it doesn't require surgery and maybe he's just out a couple of weeks to manage the pain. But it's kind of crazy to me and ironic that the Bengals finally get off to the fast start that they've been looking for the last couple of years. They're 2-0. But again, they win the battle and probably lost the war because if Joe Burrow is out until Christmas, I'm sorry, there's no way I can believe in the Bengals being a serious team with Jake Browning at the helm.
No, and I think Browning is a solid backup quarterback in the NFL. Yes. But
I agree.
Like, he could get through a couple games, especially with a 2-0 head start. Like you said, they normally don't get there out of the gate in September. They would be fine. But if this is going to be something where he's out multiple months, the first half of the season and more, the Bengals roster, we knew heading into the season, it was even going to be a challenge for Burrow to get this team back into the playoffs to compete for the AFC North. It's really him, Chase, Higgins, and, I don't want to say that's about it, but their roster is not great. With Browning now, I just don't know how long they can tread water. So, 2-0 is really nice, and to see the defense play well in certain areas and the clutch is big. But, without Joe Burrow, I don't think they're a playoff team anymore.
Yeah, what can we do there? And they got to go into Minnesota next week, and we'll talk about Minnesota's big loss and their kind of J.J. McCarthy disaster there on Sunday Night Football, but that's still a tough place to play, and I don't think the Vikings are any kind of pushover or anything like that. Then they play the Broncos in Denver in prime time. They play the Lions. They play the Packers. Then they have a division game against the Steelers in prime time on Thursday Night Football as well. The next 5 weeks for the Bengals are very, very tough, and without Burrow, I'm with you. I just have a hard time seeing. Later on this week, we'll talk about some options the Bengals could have. Could they make a move for Winston? Could they make a move for Kirk Cousins? Could they make smaller moves? There are a lot of options that they could probably look at, but I think Browning is probably their first plan. But they're not the only team that needs to panic. And it's funny we talk about a 2-0 team that is probably needing to panic. Now we got to move to an 0-2 team that's probably needing to panic, and it's the Kansas City Chiefs. And my guy Chris Clark from Locked On Chiefs talked about the devastating loss.
The Kansas City Chiefs start the season 0-2. First time in Patrick Mahomes' career, he has 3 consecutive losses in his NFL career. Lot to talk about when we get to Locked On Chiefs later, but the reality of this situation is Patrick Mahomes can still do things, doesn't have the greatest deep ball, showed a couple of times against the Eagles, hit a deep ball late to Tyquan Thornton. It was too little, too late, and that's the problem. The rest of the wide receivers really didn't do much. Juju Smith-Schuster didn't do much. Hollywood Brown had a couple of good catches, a couple of good plays. Tyquan Thornton had a couple of other good plays, but outside of that, obviously the biggest mistake and the thing that cost Kansas City a touchdown and maybe even potentially the win, Travis Kelce pops the ball up when he's getting ready to cross the goal line, gets intercepted by the Philadelphia Eagles. They run it back, get a fourth down conversion with the tush push for a touchdown, take a 2-score lead. Kansas City could not catch up. Much more to come on Locked On Chiefs.
I mean, at this point, they're 0-2. There is no way that they leave this weekend not in last place in the AFC West. And I think the Chiefs are still going to be a good competitive team. They played the Chargers, who could win that division. They play the Eagles, who obviously are one of the best football teams in the entire NFL. I think the Chiefs can still battle back and make the playoffs, but my preseason take that they're not going to win the AFC West, I feel confident about that because some of these issues, man, like the wide receiver group, the offensive line, the defense, like these aren't just going to go away overnight.
Yeah, that take is looking pretty good right now, and I agree with you. At the end of the year, even if they're a 7 seed in the playoffs, like I'm never going to say the Chiefs don't have a chance,
of course,
as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy. And I do think if they can tread water by the time Rashee Rice's suspension is up, Xavier Worthy's healthy, maybe Hollywood Brown at the same time, although it feels like those 3 are just never destined to be healthy at the same time.
Right.
If they are and they can be in the playoff hunt at the end, they will be a threat. But that's a big if. And when you look at their schedule, Tyler, like they play the Giants next week, no pushover, then the Ravens and the Jaguars, the Lions, the Raiders, the Commanders, the Bills, Denver. Like their schedule is really difficult. So, it's only 2 games, but they have to tread water until this team gets healthy. And I don't know. Mahomes, I still think is making plays outside of structure and doing what he can, but that roster looks really depleted right now on offense.
Yeah, they've just lost a lot of talent. Guys have gotten older. Guys have gotten banged up. And something that I've kind of been flirting with throughout the last couple of days is, should they get a reunion going with Tyreek Hill? I'm looking at the Tennessee Titans. Could Calvin Ridley maybe be some help in that offense? And those teams have made deals before and have a relationship. The Chiefs probably don't want to panic. They want to get Rice back in the fold and see what happens. But at some point, they have to up the talent there and help Patrick Mahomes with a little bit of something, especially if Kelce is going to continue to make mistakes every single week. I do want to say this, Louis, and I want to say this to you so that you can defend if you want. I have been a proponent of the tush push. I have said that it should be legal. I have said that if you can't stop it, that's your problem. But if the Eagles are going to be allowed to get basically a false start and get an extra jump and guys are moving before the ball is snapped and people are leaned over, that is where I'm starting to see that it may not be the play itself and how valid or not valid it is as a football play, but it's so difficult for the referees to be able to see those type of things with the play that now I feel I've been radicalized. They're like, all right, I want the tush push out, not because of the play itself, but because there were a few plays where it's obvious that the Eagles are kind of going forward before the ball is snapped, and it's just going to be difficult for the refs to accurately do that, which then gives such an advantage. So I'm officially out on the tush push, and I want it out of the game. Tell me I'm crazy.
No, I think that part is fair, the officiating part. But I will counter, the Kansas City Chiefs had 4 players that were offsides during that play, too, before the ball snapped. But that is part of the problem that you're it makes your point, actually, even more, is that the other side is offsides, too, and so it's very difficult to officiate. I think Jalen Hurts was over the line of scrimmage on that 3rd and goal touchdown with the push, and they just could not see because of the method of the play. Jalen just disappears. You have no idea. I do think whether I like it or not, it's going to be gone next year. They only needed 2 votes anyway this year to ban it. I think they'll get the numbers next year. hey, the Eagles got their money's worth. They got a ring off of it. They're still going to
Yep.
use it to death this year. Maybe they'll get another ring out of it. But I do think it'll be gone in 2026 because of what you're talking about. I don't care. I think the play itself, people should have no issues with, but the officiating part is where they'll back it to get rid of it. That'll be their basis to ban it for sure.
It's too logical of an argument where the other one was, oh, we can't stop it. I want
right,
it out.
which was
That's
last
childish.
year. This year they're going to use what you're talking about as the take, and that'll probably get the job done.
Yeah, and this year I won't be someone defending it either. I kind of see the point now on that. But with that being said, Sunday night football game, Louis is hype. His favorite defensive players in the draft showing up. The Falcons finally have a pass rush. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. I love playing on Prize Picks again. So quick, so simple, so easy. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players, and they have max discounts every single week. Like next Sunday, you could do Patrick Mahomes, more than a half a passing yard. It's almost a guaranteed win, folks, and that's a great way to kick off your lineup. So make sure that you download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. It's Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. We all turn to some funny places for advice. Your barista, your barber, maybe even a random stranger in a bathroom. But not everyone is the right one when it comes to real support. That's why BetterHelp is here with over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 10 years of experience. BetterHelp helps you find the right match, someone clinically trained and credentialed to guide you through life's challenges. For me, when I'm talking about therapy, that's the most important thing. I want to make sure that I'm matched up with the right person. So not only does BetterHelp have 30,000 licensed therapists, but if you don't get the right fit right away, you can switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Locked On. All right, Louis, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about panic time with Joe Burrow's injury and the Kansas City Chiefs going to 0-2 on the season. But now we got to talk about the Minnesota Vikings because the clock struck 12 for J.J. McCarthy. And after that incredible fourth quarter performance last week, he turned into a pumpkin. And my guy, Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings, talked about the disappointing night.
Well, that is a night you'd like to forget for the Minnesota Vikings. They fall 22-6 to the Atlanta Falcons. Total wire-to-wire drubbing. And honestly, the Vikings put as much effort into this game as I did into my temporary background here, but it was destruction in all three phases. The Vikings gave up 200 yards rushing on defense. Special teams is a total nightmare. But the worst of it all is J.J. McCarthy looking like absolute trash on the national stage. So while it is a night you'd like to forget, it's not one they're going to be allowed to forget. Everyone saw that. And it goes all the way to the top. You had procedural penalties, miscommunications at all levels in all three phases. This is not just the Vikings had a couple of backup linemen and there was some pressure. Everyone sucked. Everyone has to answer for it. And it goes all the way up to the top. Kevin O'Connell's going to have to change his approach to this team if the Vikings are going to make a season out of this. Otherwise, it could be a long year.
And listen, I know that J.J. McCarthy had that great fourth quarter to end the game, and everybody was, saying his quotes about Gardeners and Warriors, and that's a great quote for sure. But, I feel like if we sit down and look after two games, McCarthy has basically played one good quarter of football out of the 8 that he's played. And I think that, Kevin O'Connell is a very good coach. They do have some good stuff. But if they're banged up at all and not 100%, McCarthy is not good enough to carry them like Sam Darnold did at times last year. And they have to be wondering if that was the right move.
No, me and you talked about expectations for McCarthy heading into the year, and I even said I was a little bit nervous about his mechanics, accuracy inside the pocket, and you saw that today. There was a bad overthrow in the fourth quarter when it was still a game, a bad underthrow to Justin Jefferson. I just think his throwing motion still is way too elongated. His footwork is not very in sync with his throwing motion. He just doesn't, I don't want to say he doesn't seem ready because that fourth quarter comeback was really impressive, but even for Kevin O'Connell, who is such a QB-friendly coach, it looks like you said, I mean, he's had 7 of 8 bad quarters in 2 games. So I was quite surprised how far back he looked today after that fourth quarter comeback against a good Chicago defense.
Yeah, it really did look like he fell behind, and the turnovers are the big issue. 2 interceptions, fumbled 3 times, lost one of them, sacked 6 times. And yes, the Vikings offensive line, as Luke said, had some backups in. But as you know, Louis, sacks often are a quarterback stat. And McCarthy not getting rid of the ball, him being kind of, happy feet in the pocket when things aren't absolutely perfect. Those are things that a young player going into the NFL is going to have to deal with, and he very much so looked like a rookie. But we got to give the credit where the credit is due, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. And my guy, Aaron Freeman, is very excited about what he's seeing on that defense, even if it was a field goal fest.
It was a field goal fest for the Falcons as they beat the Vikings to get their first win of 2025. New Falcons kicker Parker Romo proved to be one of several heroes for the Falcons in their Week 2 win over Minnesota on Sunday night. He connected on 5 field goals as the Falcons offense struggled in the red zone, converting just 1 of 5 tries. But the struggles were only in the red zone for the Falcons offense as they dominated on the ground, rushing for over 218 yards, spearheaded by 153 rushing yards from Bijan Robinson. The defense also was anything but struggles, putting the clamps on the Vikings offense, sacking J.J. McCarthy 6 times, turning him over 3 times, including 2 interceptions. It was the rookies that shined brightest. Both rookie DBs, Billy Bowman and Xavier Watts, each snagged an interception, and you also had a sack from James Pierce and Jalen Walker. We'll see if the Falcons can build off of this win and get a win streak going next week in Week 3 against Carolina. For more coverage of the Falcons and this win, follow Locked On Falcons, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Louis, before I give you the floor to wax poetic about the Falcons rookie edge rushers, I just want to say before the season we talked, the Falcons have the least amount of sacks in the last 20 years in the NFL, the least amount of sacks in the last 10 years in the NFL, the least amount of sacks in the last 5 years in the NFL. So for them to come out and put up 6 sacks and dominate up front on both sides of the ball, defense and offense, I mean, they ran for over 200 like Aaron said. This was a dominant performance up front, and that defensive line deserves a ton of credit because this isn't something that just happens for the Atlanta Falcons. They got to be over the moon, and I know you loved Jalen Walker and especially James Pierce Jr. coming into the year.
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons defense today, 6 sacks, 2 picks, 3 fumbles, a 37.5 passer rating from
They're
McCarthy.
Rookies. Xavier Watts, Billy Bowman.
And I feel vindicated because that entire Falcons draft class was just guys that I wanted for my football team. And Pierce looked great today, got a sack. Jalen Walker got a sack, like you mentioned. Xavier Watts, we all knew coming out of Notre Dame was a ball hawk. I mean, 13 interceptions the last 2 years with the Fighting Irish. That pick was so textbook, like jumping that route over top of Justin Jefferson. If they're going to play like that, yeah, it was, as Aaron said, it was a field goal fest. You know the Falcons offense, though, is capable of putting up points. If Bijan Robinson's going to look like that, and the passing game, I think, will be better as the year goes on. If that defense can get to the quarterback, I think my take of Atlanta being I'm not saying they're going to win the South. I still like Tampa Bay, but I think they are a playoff caliber football team if the defense is going to look like that, because I think the offense normally is going to look better than just kicking field goals every drive.
Yeah, and they were able to move the ball successfully. It wasn't like, the offense was stalled out and couldn't really do anything. I mean, again, they ran for 218 yards on the day. They bullied the Vikings.
And A.J. Terrell was hurt, by the way. I mean, Terrell came out and they didn't really skip a beat.
Yeah, you do have to worry about that injury going forward because he is such a good player.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was gone, and they really held down. Justin Jefferson didn't really get anything going on the offensive side of the ball for the Vikings outside of right before halftime when he catches that 50-yarder or whatever. I'm looking at the Falcons and I'm looking at the Vikings right now. They're both 1-1, but I have way more confidence in Michael Penix and the Falcons to make a playoff run than I do the Vikings at this point in time. Would you agree with me on that?
No, I do agree. And I think McCarthy, I don't know. I mean, he has a long way to go. And I don't love Penix still as like a franchise quarterback potentially, but for how talented Atlanta's roster is, I think he seems ready to carry them into the postseason more than McCarthy. I think the gap development-wise right now seems pretty substantial.
100%. And that makes sense. I mean, Penix was a more experienced player coming
Right.
out of college. He had some time last year to actually get on the field and play. All of that does make sense. But hey, 1-1 for both teams. Excited to watch them moving forward. Now, a team that's probably the most shocking out of week 2, the Indianapolis Colts and Daniel Jones moved to 2-0. And even if I don't believe it, they're starting to make me. Today's episode is brought to you by Upside. Hey, NFL fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. You can use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN to get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas that you already need. At first, I thought, it's too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make the daily commutes that you already make, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or to an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time 25 cents per gallon bonus. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Offer varies by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. All right, Louis, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL, breaking down a wild Sunday, week 2. We talked about panic time for the Bengals and the Chiefs for different reasons. Hit a great Sunday night football game that doesn't look great on the score, but was very interesting nonetheless. I think this game was a litmus test. I saw some people complaining about this matchup, and I'm like, if you don't like the Falcons versus the Vikings on Sunday Night Football, you simply don't like football. That's the only way that I can put it. But regardless of whether you like football or not, you gotta respect what the Indianapolis Colts are doing right now. They had a wild finish against the Denver Broncos where the Broncos commit a penalty after a missed field goal. It sets the Colts up for another opportunity, and they bang home the field goal to win 29-28. The Colts are 2-0. Louis, look at their schedule, man. They play the Titans next week. That's a win. Then they go to Los Angeles and play the Rams. Maybe they lose that game against a good Rams team on the road, but then they're back home for the Raiders. They're back home for the Cardinals. Then they go across the country again to play the Chargers. That could be a loss against a good team. But then they get the Titans again on Halloween weekend at home. Like, we could look up in 6 weeks, and the Colts could be 6-2. I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, this is kind of last year's Denver Broncos in a way, a team that I
Yes.
just had no expectations to be a wild card contender, and boom, they're in. They have a quarterback that's helping elevate an offense. Daniel Jones, I've got to eat crow so far. He looks great. I mean,
He does.
the first game's against Miami, and we saw
Steichen.
even, but Miami's defense is terrible. But then to do what he
Right.
did today against Denver,
Prove it.
who I think
Prove
is
it.
like top 5 in the league on defense, to put up over
Yes.
300 passing yards,
Yes.
touchdown through the air and on the ground, no turnovers. That's impressive. And then Tyler, when they won, I'm like, I looked at the Colts roster. I'm like, I guess it makes sense. Like, they're not a bad constructed roster. Like, they have a lot of weapons. They have a good head coach. I'm like, I guess I shouldn't really be shocked they're good. I'm just shocked how good Daniel Jones looks so far. Even as a guy that covered Shane Steichen for a couple of years as Jalen Hurts' play caller, I think what he's doing to elevate Jones's game definitely surprises me. But looking at their roster and their schedule, like you said, I think in a 7-team playoff format, they could definitely get in there. And the AFC South is wide open, so they could even win the division.
Well, there's no way they're not going to be leading the division after the weekend. I mean, the Texans are 0-1, Jags 1-1, Titans are 0-1,000,000 and will always be. So, like, the Colts have a great chance to keep this rolling with the schedule that we just went over. And for me, it's all about that offensive line, dude. Jonathan Taylor runs for 165. And in the NFL, as you know, is a team that's had a great offensive line for years. There's so little offensive line talent in the NFL that if you do have a good offensive line, it gives you such an advantage over the rest of the crowd, even if you got Daniel Jones at quarterback and things like that. Like, it's just such an advantage. Now, on the flip side, the Broncos, they maybe beat the worst team in the NFL in the Titans in week 1. Or the Panthers and Dolphins and Titans are all having a slap box for who's the worst team in the NFL. But they didn't look good against the Titans, and they come out here and they shoot themselves in the foot again in a game that they should have won, and they were up going into the fourth quarter. And my guy Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos talked about the self-inflicted wounds.
Too many self-inflicted wounds by the Denver Broncos have them sitting at 1-1 after a rough day in Indianapolis here. Penalties down the stretch here for the Broncos. One on J.K. Dobbins, one on Adam Troutman. Back the Broncos up into a long field position. And Will Lutz missed a 42-yard field goal that ultimately would come back to haunt the Broncos as Daniel Jones and the Colts led a drive that got their kicker to midfield here. The penalty on Inyoma Uwazurike using himself as leverage against the snapper leads to a redo on a field goal try that was missed by the Colts. The second attempt is good. The Broncos gave up over 473 yards of offense to Daniel Jones and the Colts, and they might have a second-level problem at inside linebacker. For more, make sure you tune in to the Locked On Broncos podcast this week.
I got to admit, my confidence in the Broncos is shaken right now. Bo Nix made some plays, but he did not look great. We talked last week. Cody was saying maybe they need to simplify the offense and kind of pare down their personnel, creativity, and all of that to get things rolling. Bo Nix doesn't look much better than he did as a rookie, and some of maybe the magic that the Broncos had with the turnovers on defense and all that isn't quite there this year. So I'm looking at the Broncos, and I'm like, man, if the Colts are going to be 2-0, and, you know, we still like the Steelers and the Jets, who both lost this weekend, I still think they're competitive teams. My faith in the Broncos to be a playoff team this year has gone down a little bit.
Yeah, because like you said, with Bo Nix, he's not elevating his game to where if Sean Payton can't carry as a play caller and kind of mask some of their deficiencies on offense, like they don't have a lot of weapons on that offense, to be honest. Bo Nix doesn't look like someone that you can win because of, at least as of right now. You can win with Bo Nix, and with a fourth-place schedule like last year, or a bad schedule, you can make the postseason as a 7 seed. But, yeah, he hasn't, through 2 weeks, looked like a guy that's ready to take that year 2 leap that a lot of quarterbacks do. And because teams like the Colts are emerging in the AFC, and it feels very competitive in the middle of that conference, I mean, I didn't pick them to make the playoffs anyway, and I kind of feel like I'm sticking with that so far, even at 1-1.
100%. And the thing with Bo Nix is the highlight plays that he makes look good because he's running around, he's using his athleticism, he's hammering home balls to his wide receivers. But the down-to-down effectiveness, even back to last year, the down-to-down efficiency and effectiveness is just not there right now. So the Broncos are a team that there was already kind of a cautious optimism in Denver. And if they come out and don't look great for the next couple of weeks, I think there will be some concern there. I do want to mention one more wild finish in the NFL. The Cowboys, Brandon Aubrey nails a 64-yarder, nails a 46-yarder to win it. The Cowboys win 40-37 in OT. And I wanted to bring up this game not just because the Cowboys found a way to win it, but Russell Wilson currently leads the NFL in passing yards. He had 450 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. Everybody was talking about benching Russell Wilson, including us. Russ said, no, not yet, folks. So what an insane game there. Right now, I'm looking at the Cowboys, though, and I don't care that they're 1-1 and played the Eagles close. I still don't believe in either of these teams. I just think that they're both bad teams that got hot against each other.
And because, Tyler, like, they're going to have to win games exactly like they did today with shootouts.
Yes.
I just don't think that defense and run game are going to be able to help take the pressure off Dak. And so they're going to have to win shootouts. They did today. I mean, that was one of the craziest games I've watched. But overall, the Cowboys are just too much of a one-trick pony for me to consider them as a playoff game. And again, anyone can compete like as a 500 team for a 6 or 7 seed, but I don't think they're a legitimate threat in the East or in the division.
100%. Now, just rapid fire through some of the other scores from Sunday. The Lions put a beat down on Ben Johnson and the Bears in Detroit, 52-21. I think the main takeaway there is maybe we might have tried to put some dirt on the Lions just a little bit too early in that one. The Rams absolutely cooked the Titans, 33-19. The Rams are a great team. Cam Ward looks good, but the rest of the Titans don't. That Patriots game was nuts. We had multiple kickoff returns. 33-27, the Patriots come back and win that game. The 49ers hold on with Mac Jones, 26-21. The Bills drubbed the Jets, 30-10. That game was never close. The Steelers, man, the Seahawks go into Pittsburgh and dominate on the ground with Kenneth Walker and that offense. Sam Darnold looks good. The Steelers make a lot of turnovers. It's 31-17 Seahawks. Ravens roll the Browns. That was never close. The Cardinals hang on late against the Panthers as the Panthers tried to kind of come back and make a move. Out of any of those games, is there anything that stood out to you that you think does mean something going forward?
I think for me, I might have been a little bit too early jumping the gun on the New York Jets. I don't know. I mean, Justin Fields was great in that first week, but he was erratic today from an accuracy perspective. I am a little nervous about that Jets playoff pick, so we'll see. It's early still, but man, what a difference 1 week can make.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you there. I feel like that as well with the Lions. Like I said, I have been saying I think the Lions take a major step back. I thought week one's loss to the Packers was proof that, the coordinators couldn't get it done. I mean, it was a rough week for Madman's bets. The best bets were the worst bets that you could have. It was a terrible week out there. And one of them, I thought the Bears would come in and play for their coach and cover 6.5. I thought the Lions would win, but I thought the Bears would at least make it close. Those were two different level of teams out there. And for the Lions to come out and put up a 50 burger at home and kind of remind people, we're not quite dead yet. I thought that does mean something. And the Lions really, really needed that to get back on track. Jared Goff, after a rough week one, looked absolutely fantastic in this game. So credit to the Lions and credit to Dan Campbell for showing the NFL world that they're still here. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Legacy, Louis DiBiase. As we tell you every single episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.